Underwriting deals is such a major pain point for people. Most don't want to do it, and the people that are good at it are few and far between. That is why after 6 years of being in the industry and buying over 1,200 apartments, using my best-selling multifamily deal analyzer, I created Real Estate Lab, a full suite acquisition software for multifamily investors. We have built a product that helps investors automate their acquisitions and close more deals, all in a cloud-based platform. You can go to realestatelab.com and sign up today using the promo code TAG2 for 10% off your first 12 months. This is David Tupin. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Apartment Gurus, where we dive deep into all things multifamily investing. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower real estate investors to reach their highest potential. Each week, host Tate Siemer and co-host Chelsea Garber interview high-level guests from all over the industry who are sure to bring valuable, actionable ideas that will propel your business to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned investor, you are in the right place. And now your hosts, the Apartment Gurus, Tate Siemer and Chelsea Garber.
Welcome everybody back to another episode of the Apartment Gurus, where our guests are the gurus, not necessarily myself or Chelsea. Chelsea is not with us today. She's traveling, and Chelsea does about every other episode with me. She's kind of the special featured guest that comes on the show a lot. And so, yeah, that's why we changed the name. Garrett it was the Apartment Guys for 2 years, and we just changed it to the Apartment Gurus. So you got a lot to live up to, Garrett, in this episode.
I will do my best, Tate.
Yeah, I love it. So, Garrett Sutton is with us today, and from an experience standpoint and what he's been able to accomplish as a best-selling author and an attorney, Garrett is a true guru in this space. So we get to learn from him today. So yeah, like I said, Garrett Sutton, he's an attorney, a best-selling author, and one of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad advisors. I think I've heard of that guy. He's pretty famous, right?
He is.
He wrote the Purple Book.
Yes.
Yeah. Rich Dad, Poor Dad listeners, if you haven't read it, you need to go get it today and read it. It's fundamental in what we're doing here. Garrett has over 35 years experience in assisting individuals and businesses to limit their liability, protect their assets, implement advantageous corporate structures, and advance their financial goals. So mentioned that he is an author. Garrett, I know you have is that a newer book that you just published?
Yeah, Veil Not Fail is my most recent book.
Got it.
Covering piercing the veil and preventing people from getting your personal assets. So we can talk about the new book.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So Garrett, first of all, just welcome to the show. I'm really grateful that your willingness to come on and your generosity and sharing. Looking forward to this. So appreciate you being on.
Well, thanks, Tate. Good to be with you and your listeners. And I love the view of Salt Lake City behind you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Those mountains are so close to the city, and where I live really close to. I live 10 minutes from downtown, and 10 minutes kind of perpendicular turn up towards the mountains. I'm in the foothills with my dog hiking around, and another 10 minutes from there, I'm mountain biking. It's 30 minutes, I'm skiing. It's really awesome out here.
That's great. As I said, my son went to the University of Utah, and we love going out to Salt Lake. It's a nice, clean, livable city.
Yeah, it is. It's going through a growth spurt right now that we haven't seen in a long time. We haven't ever really. When I moved here in '99, houses were 100,000 each, 125. So affordable, and the cost of living was one of the reasons I picked here. And it was an easy place to get a job, easy place to find a place to live. And, it's changed a lot. Let's put it that way. I mean, single family home prices are crazy, more like, 3 times as much as they were 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing to watch it. So luckily I own my own house for 9-10 years now. And so I got to appreciate some of that. But Garrett, if you would kind of just share a little bit about your story, you're add a little color here to the bio, so to speak. And, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing now, talk about the book and, how you can help people.
Great. Well, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area and went to the University of California at Berkeley. And, I watched the riots back in the day. It was really entertaining. Then I went across the bay to San Francisco to Hastings Law School, which is the University of California's law school in San Francisco. And I always liked corporate law, and that was my favorite class in law school. And so I got out of the law school and practiced corporate law in the Bay Area and then in Washington, D.C. And, Tate, I got tired of the big city. So in 1989, I moved up to Reno. I'd spent all my summers as a kid up at Lake Tahoe. I loved to ski, and Reno's kind of the business center in the area. So I became a corporate attorney in Reno and did corporate work. And I just became very fortunate to become associated with Robert Kiyosaki and his team back in the year 2000 when Robert first came out with Rich Dad Poor Dad, and they decided to create an advisor group. And I was lucky enough to become the Rich Dad advisor for corporations and asset protection. And so I've worked with Robert and the team for over 20 years now. We've traveled around the United States and around the world, and there's just this thirst for financial education around the world. And, they don't teach it in schools anywhere. And, I think they want us to, be tax-paying slaves. They don't teach us the stuff that even Robert mentions in Rich Dad Poor Dad. Certainly they don't teach corporate law or patent or trademark law, which I think every kid in 12th grade should be learning about. But they don't teach that. So that's why I've written these books in the Rich Dad Advisor series. And it's been very rewarding to work with Robert and to assist people in protecting their assets.
Is 100% of what you do with Robert's group?
Well, pretty much. I mean, I've been able to put the books out there, and a book is a great business card. And so people will call me for setting up LLCs and corporations, and we provide that service, across the country in all 50 states. And, we offer a free 15-minute consultation with an account specialist, and, people call up and we try and give them the information they need so they can protect their assets.
That's great. I'm obviously a huge fan of Robert's, and I'm sure many listeners are as well. And certainly many of my colleagues are, it's the first thing they mention when they're talking about their story, I got Rich Dad Poor Dad and I read it. And that's where I got the idea to get into real estate. But so I just got to ask you, how did you meet him? Like, how did that all happen?
Well, a friend of mine, a CPA here in Reno, moved to Phoenix and became acquainted with Robert, and they were looking for a Nevada attorney. Nevada is one of the great states for setting up entities. Things worked out. They interviewed a number of attorneys, but as I've said before, the fact that I played rugby helped a lot. Robert loves rugby.
Cool.
And, so, I played rugby in San Francisco back in the day. And so, things just worked out.
That's very cool. That's a heck of a sport, man. That's brutal. Not that I've ever played, but yeah. All right. So let's talk for a second about, so I guess some specialized knowledge here for the real estate investor, particularly the commercial real estate investor that's doing, let's say 40 to 300 doors kind of thing. What are the basics of what we need to know in terms of, entity law and how to really get things well set up. So to speak, the veil can't, in your words, the veil can't be pierced, so to speak.
Right. Well, for any real estate investor, 1 unit, 100 units, whatever you have, you have choices of how you can hold title. And so you have the choice of holding title in your individual name. And when you go to the county recorder, you look up the single family home and it says Tate as an individual. You also have the choice of setting up an LLC, and typically we use LLCs for holding real estate. And when you go to the county recorder, it says Tate's LLC.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a much better way to go. If you hold title in your individual name, if you get in a car wreck, if a tenant sues, they can reach that property without issue. It's very easy for them to take control of that piece of real estate. If you take title in the name of an LLC, a tenant suing can get what's inside the LLC, the equity in the property. And if you hold 10 properties in one LLC, they could get the equity in all 10. So we don't want to put too many properties in one LLC. If you get in the car wreck, the outside attack, where someone has a judgment against you that has nothing to do with the real estate, but if title is in your individual name, they can get access to the real estate. The court awards them the title to the real estate.
Wow.
If we hold title in that LLC in the right state, they can't barge in and force a sale of the real estate. They have to wait for distributions to be made. And the attorney who's on a contingency fee, they get paid when they collect. It's hard. They don't want to monitor distributions and have to go to Wyoming and hire an attorney. So we want to use LLCs against the inside attack where the tenant sues and the outside attack where maybe you get in a car wreck. You have much better protection by taking the simple step of having title in the name of the LLC.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. Okay, so 10 properties, 10 LLCs, right? Is that what you, or do you recommend? I happen to know a teeny bit about this. Do you recommend a series LLC in that case?
I don't like the series LLC. They're not tested yet. The courts so far have been confused by them. So let's say you have 10 properties. Would you set up 10 separate LLCs? I have clients who do that. Could you set up 5 LLCs and hold 2 properties? Yes. Just know that on the inside attack, if the tenant sues, they could get the equity in the 2 properties instead of just the one, if you held 1 property per LLC. But, you know, Tate, this is a judgment call. I let my clients make that decision. I'm not going to push LLCs on them. It's really their decision. I have clients who have a limit of 3 properties per LLC. But you know, there are a number of factors there. Would you put your single family home in the same LLC as a duplex that you rent to the Hells Angels? No. I mean, you just need to separate them according to your best judgment.
Okay, got it. Okay, I guess to get a little, well, I'll take it one way, and then I want to ask you about syndications and you know the structure with those. But let's see okay, I'll ask you about syndications first. So, you know, when we do a large scale apartment community and we buy it, we're starting, I think if my partner was here, he could verify all this because he does all this, but I believe we're starting 2 LLCs. Actually, we're starting 3 if I'm thinking through it right. There's the general partnership, the limited partnership, and the holding entity that both of those other entities have part ownership of. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So with syndications, a lot of times you'll use a limited partnership.
Yeah.
And the general partner has absolute control. And so if you're a general partner as an individual in a limited partnership, you can be held personally responsible for everything that goes wrong. So you don't want to be an individual general partner. You want to set up that second entity, perhaps an LLC, to be the general partner. So we're encapsulating unlimited liability for the individuals into a limited liability LLC. So with the LP, you really certainly need 2 entities. The limited partnerships on title. The LLC is the general partner that manages the
Yeah.
limited partnership. So, with
Oh,
that
that's
structure,
interesting.
you need
Okay.
two entities. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I've never
Now,
heard of that. The GP partnership managing the LP partnership. I think we've always just set up a third entity. Sounds like.
yeah. Well, you could have a third entity, which would be the owner of the
Yeah.
limited partnership interests. And a
Oh,
lot of my clients do that. So let's say you have a Utah limited partnership.
yeah.
And you own 20%. You could own it in your individual name, but a lot of my clients would want that valuable asset to be held in their own Wyoming LLC. So in
Yeah.
the car wreck case, someone wants to get at the Utah limited partnership interest. They have to fight through Wyoming, because that's what you own.
Yeah.
You own the Wyoming LLC, which owns the Utah LP. And so it just makes it more difficult. We want to put up as many real and perceived barriers as possible. It's a litigious society. People are suing each other all the time.
Yeah.
So let's take steps to protect ourselves.
Yeah. So, okay, just to kind of nail this down for myself in my own head, like, does it make sense to you? Because I'm 90% sure that's the way we've done eight of our deals. Is we have a GP entity, an LP entity, and they both have ownership in a holding entity that owns the property.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Is that fundamentally different than the scenario where the GP entity owns the LP entity?
Well, no, the GP entity has to have some ownership in the limited partnership entity.
Okay.
That's by definition. The limited partnership requires two partners, a general partner and a limited partner, one or more limited partners. So the GP entity, because of that unlimited liability, we only have the GP own 1 or 2% of the LP. So we don't want to have too much ownership there. And then you guys as investors take your other interests as limited partnership interests, which have less risk.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. I'm pretty clear about that. Can you think of anything else that we as a company do you recommend like an umbrella insurance policy for us as a company? Is that something you'd recommend?
Well, I always recommend the personal umbrella policy, right?
Okay.
For you and for your home and for your autos.
Okay.
That personal umbrella policy, if you have your home and auto with the same insurance company, say it's Farmers, you can ask them, you go, look, I've got the homeowners with you. I've got my auto. I'd like to get the umbrella policy.
Yeah. Okay.
And typically for an extra $400 a year, you get $1 million in extra coverage. And, one of the biggest risks out there is that car wreck. So you've got enough insurance for the car wreck. The attorneys know how to get at that money. And they're less likely to go after a Wyoming LLC where they have to hire an attorney in Wyoming and monitor distributions. It's just not a good use of their time. They're better off going to the next case with insurance. Yeah. So the personal umbrella policy I like. Now, you can have the commercial umbrella policy too. And, if you have investors in a syndication, that's a good idea. For some of my properties here in Reno, I found the commercial umbrella policy to be pretty expensive. And so I have it at times and at other times I don't. But I always think that the personal umbrella policy is worth having.
Okay. So on the commercial umbrella policy, that would be per LLC, like each LLC would have one?
No, you can have a commercial umbrella policy that would cover 5 LLCs owning 10 properties. You could have one policy for that.
Got it. Okay, cool. I'm writing down a little to-do list here. Hopefully the listeners are too. Like, this is really important stuff, guys. This could come down. This could like affect your retirement, all your assets, everything. And all you got to do is do couple things to protect it. Go ahead, Garrett.
I got to mention one more thing, Tate. So let's say you have a duplex in your individual name and you transfer title into the name of the LLC. You've got to let the insurance company know that title is in the name of the LLC.
Right.
And what they'll do is they say, well, Tate, you've transferred title into an LLC. That's a business entity. We have to charge you a higher premium, which is nonsense. The risk of a fire is the same, whether title's in your individual name or the LLC name. So here's how you skin the cat. You say, okay, leave the premium in my individual name, but add the LLC on title as an additional insured.
Yeah.
And that'll get you covered.
Okay. Perfect. Well said. Well done. I like it. All right. So I guess we kind of talked about the other thing I want to talk about, which was like at a business level, what are, as an overall company, right? So Greenlight Equity Group, we're basically an acquisitions firm that I've got 3 partners in, and we feed Greenlight Equity Group revenue from the acquisition fees, the cash flow, the back end of our deals, right? So obviously our deals are each individual companies. They're not owned by Greenlight, and we put them in, we each have our own LLC, personal, it's basically a personal LLC, and we put the asset in that name. And then like I said, so Greenlight is, as a company, Greenlight's not really, we pay to keep the lights on. We have payroll. You've got a couple employees at this point. And so, I guess for the Greenlight entity, right, which is really the kind of entity, in my opinion, that everybody should be starting if they're getting in this business in a big way. So for the Greenlight entity, what should we be thinking about as far as protection goes?
Well, Greenlight, is it an LLC?
Yeah.
And is it taxed as an S corp?
It is. Yeah, it is.
Because you have payroll. You can minimize payroll taxes by being taxed as an S corp. So we have a lot of people, Tate, that would have Greenlight LLC, do the management, have it be taxed as an S corp, so we can minimize the payroll taxes. Greenlight doesn't own assets.
Right.
All right. You've got all your other LLCs or LPs on title to properties. Greenlight doesn't own assets. Greenlight could get sued for whatever reason. And so we don't want to let someone suing Greenlight inside to get at valuable assets. So the way you've got it structured is how I see it structured all the time.
Okay.
Greenlight can pay all the expenses. It can pay the employees. And it is separate and apart from ownership in any of your valuable syndications.
Yep. Okay. Crystal clear. I like it. All right. So, we talked about entity formation, and for say that any real estate investor, right? But particularly what I consider larger scale commercial multifamily goes. A lot of my clients, a lot of my coaching clients, a lot of the listeners are in a single family space. They're flipping, they're wholesaling, maybe they're buying and holding, duplexes or fourplexes, which, as you know, are not commercial properties. And they're looking at and working on leveling up into commercial. And I coach people to go big at first, because there's no reason not to. That's just as much work to do 100 units as it is to do 10. In fact, 10 can be more work. So especially from an equity standpoint, and that's a different conversation. So, for somebody in those shoes, right? What should they be thinking about? How's life going to be different for them from a legal standpoint?
Well, let's talk about the flipping and the wholesaling. That's a place where a lot of people get started. You still want an entity, you still want to be protected. But typically in those situations, you're not owning the property too long. And so you probably operate through an LLC. If it's a trade or business, you're going to have to pay yourself a salary in there. And so a lot of times we'll have a flipping and wholesaling LLC taxed as an S corp. And then let's say, Tate, you come across a property that you like, right? You're flipping it and you go, I want to keep this thing. This thing, I can rent it. I fix it up nice. We don't keep it in the flipping entity. We would transfer it out to a new LLC that would hold it. Because with flipping, you can get sued. So we don't want to have a valuable asset in the flipping entity. And it's very easy to just transfer it out to a new LLC that you will hold it in. So that's one of the key things to think about is we don't want to have a flipping or wholesaling entity where we could get sued owning valuable real estate. We use a separate LLC for that.
Got it. Okay, cool. What, yeah, I guess what else are we looking at as far as does the scale make any difference? I mean, does the commercial versus residential, are there any implications of that?
No, I mean, you have to protect them both, right? I mean,
Yeah.
whether it's residential or commercial, you want that asset protection.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know what happens, Tate? A lot of times people get their first property and they think, I just can't afford an LLC here. And first of all, it's not that expensive.
No,
It's
if you can't
very
afford an
affordable.
LLC, you shouldn't be doing a deal.
You should really.
Yeah,
But what happens is they forget to set up the LLC. They say, I'll do it later. And then they just never do it. And all of a sudden you get sued. And then it's too late to transfer title into an LLC. You're just much better off doing it right at the start.
Yeah, that makes total sense. What about trust? I was a realtor in a former life, and my broker was all about holding entities in trust because it adds, according to him, and I guess according to my general knowledge, it's supposedly adds another layer to the veil, so to speak.
Well, we have to talk about the trust. I mean, a living trust, which is the standard revocable trust that you use to avoid probate, offers no asset protection.
Okay.
So we would have a Wyoming LLC as the holding parent LLC, right? Let's say you have a Utah LLC and a South Carolina LLC, all owned by one Wyoming LLC, which offers the asset protection. That Wyoming LLC is owned by your living trust.
Yeah.
Your living trust says, I know what I want when I pass. I don't want to have to go to court and pay these huge attorney's fees. So the living trust offers the probate avoidance, which is good. The living trust is owned by the Wyoming LLC, which offers the asset protection. And for virtually all our clients, that's enough. Now, there are these asset protection trusts out there. Some people, and they're irrevocable, meaning you can't change them. The living trust is called a revocable trust, meaning you can change it. But the irrevocable trust, you can't change. It does offer asset protection, but they're somewhat expensive. You have to have an independent trustee that you pay every year. For some people, it's the right thing. But for most people starting out, the Wyoming Holding LLC owned by the living trust is just fine.
Why Wyoming for an LLC?
Well, we have three really good states that compete against each other to be the best for asset protection: Nevada, Wyoming, and Delaware. And this is all because I tell this story. During the American Revolution, we were fighting not only the English crown, but the British East India Company, this giant corporation.
Yeah.
And so the revolutionaries thought, once we get independence, we're going to not have a national corporate law. They all wanted their own state's corporate law. Most countries around the world have one national corporate law. In the US, it's 50 different state corporate laws.
Interesting.
Because of the American Revolution. But the advantage here is that the states compete against each other to be the best. And Nevada, Delaware, and Wyoming compete, and they offer excellent asset protection. We like Wyoming because, the asset protection is just as good. They don't list your name on the state website. So there's a little bit of privacy there. And then Nevada and Delaware are $350 a year to each state. Wyoming's only $62 a year.
Wow.
And so, with the lower price, the better privacy, and the equal asset protection, when we give our clients the choice, it's always a Wyoming LLC.
And should all of our LLCs be Wyoming LLCs as far as the syndications go?
No, you could syndicate in the if you buy a property in Utah, you could have a Utah LLC.
Okay.
And then have everybody, it's up to them. But like for you guys who have maybe 20%, I would have that 20% Utah LLC or LP interest owned by a Wyoming LLC. That's where Wyoming comes in.
Got it. Okay. Another thing on the to-do list here. It's great. This is so good. All right. So what haven't I asked you that I should have? Like what, for
Well, we
you
talked
kind of
about
know what our listeners do. Yeah, let's talk about your book.
we talked about fail not fail briefly, and the new book I wrote because piercing the corporate veil, where someone's suing the corporation, says you didn't follow the rules.
Yeah.
I want to reach your personal assets. You've set up the company. You want to be protected. And the court says, yeah, you didn't follow the rules for corporations or LLCs. This applies to LLCs. And they allow the person suing to go after your personal assets. So that's called piercing the corporate veil or the LLC veil. And Tate, it happens in 50% of all cases.
Wow.
50% of the time, people haven't followed the rules and they lose everything.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote the book. And it tells stories about how people have not followed the rules. And so you learn from their mistakes. And then we offer advice on how to follow the rules properly. But yeah, I mean, this book, if you've set up your corporation online or your LLC online, no one ever told you about these ongoing rules. And so it's really important to know this because, again, half the time people aren't following the rules and having their veils pierced. So this is an important book to read. And we have some interesting cases in here, like the Communist Party of America in San Francisco tried to pierce the veil and reach 2 private companies. It's an interesting case. Also, you have people who will have a judgment against their corporation, and then they transfer assets out of the corporation to avoid paying the judgment. And that's called a fraudulent conveyance. And the courts are all over that. So it's just good information to know, especially if you didn't take corporate law and you don't know about these ongoing requirements.
So guys, that's veil, VEIL, not fail, FAIL, by Garrett Sutton, Esquire. So is it on audiobook by chance?
It's audio. I recorded it, but it's good because you have to listen to my voice, but I know where to put the inflections. So
yeah. You can. I think it's Grant Cardone or Gary Vaynerchuk or somebody like constantly adds his own commentary too. It's pretty funny. Off script here. It's good stuff. Awesome. This has been so good, Garrett. Like some serious, like dense meat here, like takeaway stuff. And, listeners, go back and listen to this again. I mean, this may not, I got to be honest, this is my personality. The minutia of some of this stuff is a little bit much for me. And so I don't tend to learn as much as I should, right? In this area. And like, accounting is kind of another area for me. Like, luckily I've got a great partner, Carl, who takes care of, he's our point of contact on this sort of thing. But that said, like, this has been very easy to understand and, crystal clear on, I don't think I've really asked any clarifying questions or any follow-up really. Like Garrett, you made it really great for the listener. And so listeners, go back and listen to this a second time. Like, the first time you listen to something, you hear it. The second time you listen to something, you kind of integrate it, right? So, any of these episodes that are meaningful to you, you should listen to twice, in my opinion. But this is one with all the level of detail. You don't want to miss anything here. And so go back, take some notes. And then, Garrett, how can you help a listener that, is justifiably impressed with you today and wants to work with you? How can you help them?
Well, thank you, Tate. Our website is corporatedirect.com, and we have a lot of information there. And you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation with an incorporating specialist. We want you to understand what our services are, what it costs and all. And feel free to get on the phone and talk to us. Also, if you're worried about your corporate veil, if you haven't done the minutes, if you haven't kept things up to date, we can help you clean it up.
Cool.
So there is a cleanup service. Don't tell anyone, but just we'll clean it up. And if you need a registered agent, every corporation and LLC needs a registered agent. And let's say you're in a couple different states and you want to consolidate it. We offer that service in all 50 states. So you can find out more at corporatedirect.com. Awesome. And we'd be happy. We're happy to work with anyone.
That's great. So Garrett Sutton, Mr. Garrett Sutton, Esquire, corporatedirect.com. Guys, he just offered a free 15-minute consultation. That's one-on-one time with a huge expert in the field, Robert Kiyosaki, right? Like 15 minutes with that level of person. Everybody that listens to this should take advantage of that. Garrett, really appreciate it. Super grateful. Thank you so much for coming on the show and opening your playbook. Really
my
great
pleasure,
stuff.
Tate. Good to be with you.
Yeah. Listeners, thank you for listening to the end of another episode of The Apartment Guys. I haven't reminded you of this in a while, but two things. Number one, if you're listening to these episodes all the way through and listening to this point in the episode, and you're paying attention, right? You're actively listening and either taking notes or taking mental notes. You are doing a significant part of this business right. And so, gain some confidence from that this is kind of this level of specialized knowledge not everybody has. And people that are out there trying to do deals don't have. And so, kudos to you. It doesn't take the place of big action steps. So you can't make this the only thing you do. And then the other thing I'll just remind you guys of is we love ratings and reviews. I don't say this very often, but it's super meaningful to me to hear from you guys. So just encourage you to any platform you're listening to, leave a rating and review. So we'll check you on the next episode. We're doing 2 a week now. Chelsea joins me on every other one. So looking forward to sharing more with you guys next episode. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to The Apartment Gurus with Tate Siemer. Tate and Chelsea are grateful to have you as a loyal listener. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share with friends on your Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Also, check out Tate's YouTube channel for videos of many of these episodes and more. Until next time, take massive action steps and rock on.